find people who know more than you, right? Matt McCoy, in my early podcast for this channel, he literally had his own podcast called Sage and Cynical. And when I saw him have a podcast, it blew my mind. I'd always dreamed of maybe one day having a podcast and having a community like this. And his production value, the way the camera looked, the audio, everything about it, I was like, dude, like, that's so cool. And so what's the first thing I did when I wanted to start this podcast? I messaged the guy who ran a podcast. Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of Aligned Identity. I cannot thank you guys enough from the bottom of my heart for all of the support lately. It has meant so much to me. One of my end of the year goals was supposed to have 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And we have reached that in the beginning of May. That's insane, guys. To all the guys and gals out there who support this podcast, I speak to you in the sense that I hope you can take something away from this, and that I only wish to produce helpful and useful content and to show you a side of people that is not seen in normal media today, right? Like my two most recent podcasts, and even before that, every single one of the people I brought on are not world famous. They're not extravagant billionaires. They're normal, everyday people. And they have success and they have happiness. And you don't need a Bugatti to be successful. You can be successful in so many other aspects and so many other ways in this life. And I wanted to bring that through with my content and hope to continue that further on. Keep bringing on interesting, unique, and normal people. And, that's my goal. And I appreciate all of you from the bottom of my heart. So please continue to like, subscribe, and comment because it just makes me smile. But to get more into the topic of today, I wanted to talk about, those people in your life that give you wisdom, that help you grow as a person. I'm going to call them mentors. I've had so many mentors in my life, and it begins with parents, right? When you're born, your parents are your mentors. They teach you how to live. They teach you how to act. They instill you with values. They show you how to take care of yourself. And they really build you up to the person that you're going to be. You learn so much at an early age of the positives and the negatives of your parents, right? There are things you love about your parents. There are things that you don't like about your parents. And with mentors, it's important to distinguish what are good qualities and bad qualities amongst those people, and qualities that you want to take away and continue to grow with, and qualities that you don't want to take on. Or maybe you've already taken on and realized that you had those qualities and you want to try to change them. My first mentor that I can think of is my father, right? My dad was a very loving guy. He was very talkative, very funny. Amongst, people that he had conversations with and friends that he had, and just in general, whenever I saw him talk to people, he tried to get a smile. He tried to get a laugh out of people. And that's something I've taken on in my life. I saw that in him. I almost mirrored it, right? Like, I love that he approaches the world so happily, Of course, when he's in his bad moods, it's not the best. He doesn't care, but for the most part, I always saw the heart in him, and I always saw like how he tried to be a better person and, try to give his heart to everyone. everyone who deserved it. Um, and that really grew upon me, and I knew that was something that almost makes me unique in a way to other people nowadays. Is that like I really do try to give my heart to anyone and everyone. Try not to judge. My dad, he always had long hair. He had tattoos, and I saw the way that some people would look at him and judge him. And obviously, it's not the stereotypical sense of discrimination, but in a way it was because people labeled him without even speaking to him. And I got to see that. And that was something that I tended to gravitate away from. I didn't really want people to be able to judge me in a negative light right off the rip. I never wanted to really stand out in a negative aspect of like, oh, he has long hair, he has tattoos, maybe he's, I don't know, a sense of, a lower status person. And that's such a stupid stereotype to have, and I don't think that it's a proper one to give. But I realized that like I'm not going to judge other people based on that because my upbringing was certainly unique, and I shouldn't be here right now where I am today given my circumstances. But because I had great parents who instilled good qualities in me to not judge and to know that you can grow. My initial mentors were fantastic. My mom was more the woman of structure. She was the one who, you better get your chores done. You better, she worked so hard all the time. Even as I grew older, I realized the kind of work that she would put in. And she was the person who grinded. She had side hobbies and side hustles that, were very raw, is my best description. Things that, like, may not be legal, but it was a way to make a buck, and it was a way to provide for her family. And that was something that I recognized at a young age, that I wanted to always be someone who hustled, who had like a grind mindset. And she instilled that within me. I saw some bad qualities amongst my parents unitedly, which was, addiction. So, unfortunately, both my parents struggled with addictions of many sorts. Having that young and having that experience made me take it very seriously. And that's one thing that is honestly priceless is, you learn at a young age, like, the faults that your parents have and the troubles that they go through. And, I recognized that addiction was not one thing I wanted to go through. And I saw the kind of hell that it put upon my family and, my siblings. They also, became very bright, successful people. And we all recognized that addiction was not an option for us. We saw the trials and tribulations that they went through, and unfortunately they had to struggle for us to succeed in a way, because we saw what they went through and we learned that that was not the way we wanted to live. And not everything you get from a mentor is going to be positive. And sometimes you get to see those negative lights, those negative aspects, and decide that that's not like the way that you want to live and the kind of qualities that you want to carry on. You want to grow from that. You want to not follow down that same path. And, parents are our first mentors. And, we get to see how they live, and we get to pick and choose qualities that we enjoy and qualities we don't. And we get to decide like how we got to see two adults live their lives before our eyes. And by the time we're adults, we get to start making choices. And the choices that you make, I got to see the choices my parents made, and I get to pick the good ones and try to avoid the bad ones. Parenting is such a difficult thing in the first place. I don't have kids yet. I hope to soon, one day. But I understand that, you know, kids are going to be a sponge. They're going to see everything that I do. And I, as a parent, want to make sure that I'm the best role model I can be, because I'm going to be their first mentor. And even as I keep gaining more knowledge and keep getting a better understanding of the world, I need to instill in them the good qualities that I've seen in the world and the things that have given me success into them. After parenting, I would say teachers then become your next mentors, right? Kindergarten teachers, what a great impact that they can have on people. I remember my first kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Rainey. I remember her, in a sense, guiding me into creativity and guiding me to, like, guiding me to structure amongst a classroom. We've all gone through that, like, oh, this is how a class functions. And, you know, the whole point that they try to get across is that there is structure in school. And, you know, there is creativity. You're allowed to be an individual. You have to be nice to others, those kind of qualities. And that's something you learn and you adapt to as you keep getting older, go through more teachers, more teachers, more teachers. And, you know, in middle school is when I got like multiple teachers, right? There wasn't just that one classroom. And, you know, you start seeing different dynamics amongst how some teachers are more strict, some teachers are more lax, some teachers are more personable, some teachers are not. They're very curriculum minded. And you get to see that there are going to be different people that you interact with, and it almost builds you up to dealing with different bosses, right? Your strict teacher is going to treat you and have a different standard than your lax teacher. Your lax teacher, and I'm saying slang as lax, but your teacher who is more relaxed, more personable in the sense that they care more about your well-being. They're there more of a supportive figure than a very strict curriculum-minded teacher who is more dedicated to getting you up to speed in that curriculum. And so you get to learn right there how to approach each different teacher. In one class, this may pass, one class, this may not pass. And you get to learn that through middle school, and you get to adapt. And thankfully, I was like someone who was very good at understanding both teachers to where I never had problems. And most of us probably did the same thing. But I did tend to struggle more with strict teachers because I'm such a personable person that it was a hard time for me not to see them as a person. And so when I would expect them to maybe open up or be kinder in certain situations, they were not. And that is a experience that you get to learn from. And it could have been a fair decision. It could have been a non-fair decision, but you get to learn that that's a good or bad quality. Yeah, they were strict around me, but they were also motivating me. Or this was an unfair situation, and I don't think that they appropriately handled that. And you get to see, like, okay, in life, in unfair situations amongst my peers, amongst friends, amongst family, whatever, maybe I should give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I should trust them. Maybe I should understand where they're coming from. And that's what mentorship is about. It's about learning qualities. It's about learning traits from the mentors that you have, and to be able to build yourself up further through their interactions with you, or the knowledge and understanding that they have. And from school, you know, you kind of go on to your first job, and that's such a crazy experience, right? Your first job, you don't know what it's like to work. in a corporate environment or a highly structured, my job is on the line at school, it's very hard to get kicked out. But in a job, they can fire you for anything. And so you kind of have that over your head. But my first job, for example, I was pushing carts at a hardware store. And it's called Menards, which is like the equivalent to Home Depot or like a Lowe's. It's just a home improvement store. And I was out there in the lot just pushing carts. And my managers were the front end who dealt with cashiers, my department, which was just pushing carts, making sure customers had carts. So when they would come into the store, they would have something to put all their products in, right? That's important. Um, as a cart pusher, I realized like the whole dynamic of a retail store, the returns, the interactions with customers, the, even the basic principle of having a cart ready for a customer is going to make or break whether they want to shop at your store, right? And I had that understanding, but in a more personable level, I had to understand how my managers worked. And one of my managers that I respected the most, I had three total, but there was one in particular who was very good at their job. And I could immediately tell that they took their job very serious. And, they stayed there. I think they just retired. But I learned so much from just the way she interacted with people and the fine line between being a friend and being their boss, right? That's a difficult dynamic to kind of maneuver around because, it's important in my eyes as a manager to be able to be personable, make people feel like they're just not clocking in 9 to 5, make people feel like they're more than just an employee, make them feel like you're a family, like you're friends. That is an important quality to have when you're trying to make a cohesive shift or convene like a the words are eluding me, but to build a cohesive group of people is to make it feel more connected. And how she tried to connect people and interact with everyone in a day, it really set it apart compared to the other managers who just seemed like they were clocking in 9 to 5. And they eventually left even like while I was there or just shortly after I was there. And it makes sense because the one manager took it as her passion to be the best manager she could. And that was something I could take away from her and learn the people who clocked in 9 to 5, some of the aspects I don't want to have. The rudeness out of nowhere, for no reason, just being rude to a coworker, being rude or not being conscious of a situation, and just being tone deaf to what the people needed around her. And that was important for me to learn, but kind of going with the book Mastery by Robert Greene, working that job did show me some interesting things, and it gave me a better idea of how a store would operate, just kind of like what I broke down earlier. We all should be gaining skills, gaining knowledge, and building up our inherent understanding of how the world works. And, for me, I really care about business. I'm going to own my own business one day. I can look at this podcast as a business if I wanted to because I put effort into it. I put work into it. And so for me to build this up further, I have to make sure that I'm bringing on guests, asking the right questions, being friendly, making them feel comfortable, giving everything a comfortable environment, and also providing content that you guys are interested to listen to and interested to hear. And, it's not about just posting a video that I feel subpar about. I actually recorded 2 videos. This is the second one because the first one I didn't like as much as I'm going to like this one already. My point is that you can really take away good and bad from your mentors. As I got older, obviously, I got into the screen printing industry, and again, I fell into seeing how a small business works, right? The very first screen printing shop I went into was a very small business. It was just, one floor, and it was a production floor, and then one room where the office was, right? You just had to, the owner was in that room most of the time, and then it was me on the floor making all the production happen. And I learned that some of the characteristics I liked of my boss was that he was very charismatic. He just got so many people who envied him and adored him, and he was very good at just having conversation and being interesting. And I was like, yeah, that's a quality that one day I hope to achieve. The other was just like running the business. I know his financials weren't fantastic. I think he probably spent money that needed to go to the business on personal things, but my checks were getting paid, and I saw the products that I was printing on. Like, I knew that he was generating money through this business, and that was something that I was very interested in. And unfortunately, this is one of those examples of a mentor that, although I was interested, he was someone who didn't want to. He didn't want to really give me an insight. He looked at me as just a 9-to-5 guy, and that's important to recognize in your job or whatever it may be. If you're being recognized as nothing more than a worker, and that you're not going to learn any more than the task that you do every day, and you can't learn from the person who has more wisdom, the person who has more knowledge, the person who is more successful, if that person isn't trying to help build you up, then I would encourage you to look elsewhere. And that's exactly what I did. I knew that that was not going to be my end goal because I hated that job, because I was just viewed as that 9-to-5, you're clocking in, you're my grunt. That is literally how I felt. And I recognize that now, that the reason I was so unhappy is because I wasn't learning. I was just so stagnant. It was the only thing new was just a new job every day. It was a new production sheet. It wasn't a new opportunity for me. The opportunities were never going to grow. The opportunities were going to stay as me in that one spot printing t-shirts for the guy who's going to continue to grow his business without ever helping me become a business owner, without ever teaching me any of the tools that he had to help me grow. And that's one of the faults that I give to him, is that, I would have been so interested, so, passionate to try to learn and be a sponge, especially at like 19, 18 years old. That's all I wanted to do was learn. But he created the environment that did not promote growth or a healthy avenue to grow. So I moved on from that job. I actually moved to a bigger city at that point with my girlfriend, who is now my wife. And I just needed a job. So I settled at another screen printing shop, but this one was a bit different. It wasn't a small business. I mean, in terms of much bigger than the business that I was just running at. This shop had 2 locations, 2 printing facilities, and then a customer service office that had like all the sales and executives. They would all be in this area, and then they had 2 separate print shops in Seattle and in Ohio. And essentially, when I landed there, I obviously aced the interview. The guy that I talked to, he was the plant operator, so he managed the entire Ohio facility. And in the interview, I could immediately tell the guy was sharp and that like he had a good sense of what his shop needed, and I knew that this would be a good opportunity for me to grow, especially how it was more recently established within the past 2 years. And I even asked in the interview, like, what are opportunities for advancement? And he gave me a line. He gave me an idea of what it could look like. And I took the opportunity. And my very first day, I realized that, like, the the community wasn't there, and that people were not necessarily friends. Everyone just kind of stuck to themselves, and it was just like, let's get through this day kind of mentality. And I quickly flipped the script. I immediately tried to befriend everyone, make people feel comfortable around me, be able to have conversations. And most importantly, I tried to make it known to the manager that I was a team player, that I was someone willing to sacrifice my time, my effort to try to learn the industry, try to be the best operator, try to be the best manager, try to be the best person I could be at that job. And every day I brought in my 110%. And he recognized that. And unlike my other manager, he was someone who, when he recognized that, he immediately tried to get me trained to the point that I could help in other areas. And I started seeing my growth. I started seeing things progress. And, my other people around me started getting better at their job. And, that's when we started forming a community and things started going better. I even took a sacrifice of switching shifts just to make sure I could run another shift for the organization. And eventually, that guy moved away. And, his good qualities was that he recognized, and he was such a person of wisdom that he would give it to other people. If you were interested in, if you cared about the job, he would make sure to propel you and get you prepared. And, he was a great example of a manager who was a bit strict at times and was very stressful at times, because the kind of intensity that he would bring would sometimes bring the best and sometimes the worst out of me, in the sense that, like, he was someone who demanded perfection, and sometimes when you're still learning, you make mistakes. And then he, one of the qualities that I did not enjoy was the kind of criticism that he would give. And it was always backhanded criticisms. It was always a sense of, it always came out as being offensive towards your intellect and your knowledge and your just overall IQ. He would just make you feel so stupid without actually giving you the answer and how to maybe solve it for the next time. So I learned that it's important as a manager to continue to, like, propel people, give that knowledge, and help build people up. But when people fail, when people don't meet the requirement or the mark that you give, that they will learn from that. You learn the most from your mistakes. That guy ended up moving to Ogden, which they opened up another facility. And after that, there was no real manager in front of me who could actually teach me things. It was all just, I've trained you up to this point. Now I need you to be the manager that I made you to be. And I was fine doing that until at a certain point I realized that I'm not learning anymore. I've had the same crew. They've all been, with me every single night. We've been doing the same production. It gets monotonous. You're not learning new things. You're just again, starting to feel like a grunt, starting to continue to 9 to 5 it. And another thing I learned in that situation was that, you know, his home life was not the best. And I feel like that's maybe why he lashed out at us, was because he just wasn't genuinely happy. And that rubs off. You need to make sure that you're a happy, content person and not take that out on other people, especially the people below you, because those people are just trying to make it through the day. Those people are just trying to, you know, pay bills, save up, do whatever it is, you know. And as a manager, you should never make them feel so below you that your worth is nothing compared to you, and, you know, demean them in a point that they just don't feel good about themselves, right? Who wants to work when you just feel terrible about your job and yourself? Nobody wants to work under that environment. And I realized at that point that it was time for me to move on. And then that's where I move into another company that I had been working part-time for. So my shift was 9 to, oh no, sorry. It was like from 8 to noon or 1 o'clock, somewhere around there. And I would pick up embroidery at what would end up becoming my current position at the t-shirt company. But I learned embroidery because I wanted to broaden my skills. I wanted to broaden my knowledge of the decorating apparel industry. And so from 8 to 1, I would work at the t-shirt company. And then from 1:30 to 10 o'clock, I'd work at the other company. And I started that for maybe about 2 to 3 months. And then it was a swift transition for me to move on to this other company because I had seen the way that they treat the people around them. I had seen the kind of knowledge that they would teach, and the, you know, everyone is equal. It's a smaller family-run business, and I recognized that they wanted to make me better. They wanted me to improve, and that there was no demeaning that, like, failure is a learning opportunity. And that's one thing that I don't think the other company understood. That failure is okay as long as we learn from it. And, you know, that goes to David Burnen's podcast. You know, some of his, I would encourage anyone to listen to that when it comes to managing, because he's been in such important positions in a very corporate company with Procter and Gamble, and he's seen successes, he's seen failure. He knows everything behind it, and he understands that there's growth in failure. There really is. That's how you know I can make improvements, I can make changes. And that's one thing that I felt at T-shirt company, was that if I failed, I knew I could grow from it, and that the company would grow from it. We would all learn from that process that this is how we do it now. And that continued on, and to the point that I went full-time embroidery and learned the embroidery industry. And then from there, I ended up becoming the screen printer because that guy left because he was just a 9 to 5 kind of guy, just wanted to clock in, clock out. And that was not my MO. I wanted to start making the best prints possible. I wanted to be a better operator. I wanted to make the company better in general. And so years go by, and, you know, Tim Bicey, the most recent person on this podcast, episode 16, he's such an incredible guy because although he has faults, right? Everyone does. And he's been such a instrumental mentor to me because he comes from a place of starting a small business, running it into a franchise, and then, you know, plenty of things happened from him selling to lids, and then, you know, creating the create your own industry. And then from there, he moved to selling for a certain hat company. But again,
um, developing that industry and like revolutionizing it. And he was one of the best sales guys in like 6 states because he would look at something and say, how could I improve upon this? And that's such a incredible quality to have, is to be able to look at something that's already been done, something that's already been status quo, and think, how can I do this better? Right? That's how everything in this whole world grows, right? Like this podcast is going to keep getting better. Social media apps are just going to keep getting better. Everything is all about exponential growth. And Tim recognizes that, and Tim can see trends. Tim can put things together, and that's such a quality that I love about the guy. And when I recognized the kind of intellect and like qualities that he had, I knew that he would be a good manager for me, and that he would help build me up, and he has. The difficulty right now is that I've become such a better production manager to the point that I understand everything that's in our shop, coming to our shop, everything. We don't have a strict schedule because that's just kind of the flexibility that we need in our shop, because maybe one day we squeeze something in that needs to go out the door, and that's okay. We're not so structured in that sense, and I appreciate that, and I recognize that that's what we need. And Tim has continued to develop me to meet the requirements of the company, and that's something that's been so fruitful for me. And even in pay, even in just responsibilities, they have developed me to the point that like I can continue to grow there. Um, at some point, there's going to come a day where I don't quite have an opportunity to keep growing. The only thing that may change is maybe money, right? Raises and things like that. And that's where something like this podcast comes in handy, because I have an opportunity to continue that thirst for growth. And Tim has been a great mentor of mine. And I see like some qualities that I want to take on further. His ability to help grow people, and his ability to help. I mean, gosh, we have such a tight knit community at that shop, and some qualities that like I want to take away is I see like some of the things that again, when you're frustrated with something else, it can leak over into other qualities of how you interact with people. And that's one thing that I would recommend to anyone, is like really be able to rationalize your emotions and distinguish if you're really upset about this thing or is it something else. It's such an important quality that I've been able to learn, and you learn that from seeing other people maybe not be able to understand the emotion that they're expressing. And not every mentor is perfect, but you get to learn to take away the good and the bad from every mentor that you're ever going to have. One thing that, the Robert Greene book, Mastery, talks about is talking about diversifying and, trying new things. And, one thing that is so funny, but it's so in that mindset, right? Like when I started working out and going to the gym all the time, I didn't know how to optimize my training. And, mentors are there to help provide wisdom. Mentors are there to help provide wisdom and to help develop you as a person. And at the gym, I wasn't necessarily training optimally. And what's funny is that's a place where you can look around and see physically some of the people that you may find their physique interesting or more developed than you, right? And so I've got to the point where like I will work out with other people at the gym and try their workouts. And, sometimes I get to take away the positive things that I like about it, sometimes the negative, oh, this lift makes my elbows hurt or my shoulders hurt or something like that. I get to decide what workouts I carry on, what workouts I don't. Sometimes I'm happily surprised when I realize, oh man, like this is such a good burn, like this was a good workout, right? It's important to, even in the small things, is find people who know more than you, right? Matt McCoy, in my early podcast for this channel, he literally had his own podcast called Sage and Cynical. And when I saw him have a podcast, it blew my mind. I'd always dreamed of maybe one day having a podcast and having a community like this. And his production value, the way the camera looked, the audio, everything about it, I was like, dude, like, that's so cool. And so what's the first thing I did when I wanted to start this podcast? I messaged the guy who ran a podcast. It's that simple. Find people who know more about a subject than you do and try to become a sponge. People love to build people up. And, me and Matt, even to this day, like I talk about how I can improve the podcast or, recommendations. And like, he's so helpful. And, one day I hope to pay it back to him. One day maybe he can be the man behind the computer helping me run this thing. At that point, this podcast would have to make money, but we're not there yet. But one day, in the book it talks about you're supposed to surpass your mentors. You're supposed to be able to take all the knowledge they've developed over X amount of years and be able to take it further and to be able to grow bigger because you have the knowledge that they have and you have more years to live and build up your foundation, your dreams. And, going back to Tim, we joke about it all the time. He's lived twice my life. He's been in business longer than I've been alive. Why would I not take every ounce of information and understanding of a business from him? He's lived my whole life doing this. So, thank you guys. My ounce of wisdom would be to have the humility to seek out good mentors who know more about things than you do and have the humility to listen and be a learner again. You don't have to know everything. Have the humility to understand that you're not there yet. But with their help and with their knowledge, you can grow to be much bigger than them and surpass them at one point in your life. That's the whole point of having a mentor to protege to apprentice. You get to learn all their great qualities and take it further, right? And that goes full circle from, having parents. I've tried to make my parents proud and have a more successful life in the sense that I got to learn some of their hardships and, I get to not go down those same paths that they did. I get to exceed those derailments in life. And, we all want to grow and get better. And it's up to us to recognize that and find some good mentors. It'll help you further your knowledge. And, gosh, that's the whole point, right? To get better. So, with that, thank you so much again for all the support, guys. Make sure you leave a like, comment, and if you haven't, which some of you haven't, subscribe. And, this is on Spotify too. So if you ever want to listen on Spotify, please go over there, follow the channel. I appreciate it.
with that, guys. Thank you so much. Have a good week. Have a good month. Have a good year. Take care, guys.